Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm introduction. I represent OMI Foundation. We are a policy research think tank with a focus on sustainable mobility. So I would like to welcome you again to this wonderful panel discussion on redefining the next-gen mobility with a focus on user-centric experience, sustainability. So before I deep dive into the panel, let me take a few minutes to introduce our distinguished panelists. So I would like to start with Mr. Mani Venkata Kumar from Kochi Metro, General Manager. So as you must be aware, Sir has been working with Kochi Metro for the last 5 years. He's been instrumental on projects like automatic ticketing, AFC, automatic financing related services and all. He comes from Indian Railway Services, and as you must be aware, Kochi Metro project is the first of a kind in India which has connectivity not just on the road but also on water metro. And it's also building as a provider for urban solutions for Kerala as a state, not just Kochi now. Had a very brief introduction with Sir, and they're doing some really good work on non-motorized transport and last mile connectivity with feeder buses, electric autos, and also with public bike sharing. We also have Mr. Kunal Khattar with us. He's the founder of Advantedge, India's leading mobility seed fund. With over 25 years of global experience as a serial entrepreneur and investor, Kunal has been instrumental in backing transformative startups across the auto, mobility, logistics, and EV ecosystem. He currently serves on the board of companies like Rapido, Jing Bus, Electrify, and Exponent, to name a few. We also have, thank you, Kunal, for joining us. We also have Mr. Maxson Lewis. Maxson is the founder and managing director of Magenta Mobility, an integrated electric mobility solutions provider aiming to electrify and decarbonize India's logistics sector. With over 2 decades of professional experience spanning automotive, power, logistics, clean energy, and management consulting, Maxson is a passionate entrepreneur driving sustainable innovations in mobility. Thank you, Maxson, for joining us. We also have Mr. Visakh Sasikumar. He is the founder of Fin Mobility and an IIT Madras alumnus with over a decade of experience in the EV industry. Under his leadership, Fin Mobility has emerged as a vertically integrated EV platform focused on logistics and commute. Visakh is deeply committed to fostering EV adoption to sustainable solutions, collaborations that redefine India's logistics and mobility landscape. Thank you, Visakh, for joining us. Last but not least, we also have Mr. Sudeep Ambare. He is the CEO of ARAI AMTIF, a visionary organization fostering innovation in mobility. A chartered engineer and alumnus of Coventry University, Sudeep brings over a decade of experience in advancing sustainability and supporting startups from concept to commercialization. Through his leadership, he drives indigenization and builds strong partnerships across industry, academia, and government. So before I deep dive into the questions, I would just like to set you some context. So I was just doing some data crunching before the panel. So just to give you some data, India today has more than a half a million, 50 lakh electric vehicles on road as we speak. Just this year, I think we've already touched 2 million electric vehicle registrations as we speak. So sustainability is still not an idea, it's actually into action when it comes to India. And as you see, all of these players that you see on the panel are actually playing a very important role in this. And we talk about user-centric. So today we are talking about services like Kochi Metro, which is talking about not just about providing a metro solution to a user, but also how to actually take him to the metro, how to also work on the first mile and last mile solution, right? And that's becoming a very important attribute when you look at mobility solution. We're also talking about in an era where autonomous vehicles are also picking up. Tomorrow, I'm sure, maybe in few years' time in Huddle, you might even come to Huddle conference with an autonomous vehicle completely, and that's a lot of experiments are happening as we speak, and players like ARII have been instrumental in supporting a lot of technology innovations that's happening in this space. And we also have an investor here, like, who's been supporting a lot of these players in shared connected mobility. It's not about the agenda. This era is not about moving vehicles, right? We are talking about moving people. So how do we move people more efficiently in terms of using the land use and all, right? So that's why shared electric is going to be the future, and it's already happening in India thanks to the wonderful work you all are doing in this. So now let's dive in this panel discussion. So please park your Q&A. I really want to have this session interactive so that we have at least 10-15 minutes time for interaction with you. And so I would like to start with Mr. Mani Venkata Kumar, the General Manager from Kochi Metro. Sir, we discussed briefly today before the meeting. You mentioned some interesting work that Kochi Metro is doing. Before that, I would like to just ask a general question. What does redefining mobility for Generation Next mean to Kochi Metro and you?
Thank you, IT Mission, for the opportunity. Redefining mobility for Gen Z, taking into account their inclination to share a ride. That transportation should be efficient, sustainable, interconnected physically so that the transfers are easy, interconnected digitally so that the data is exchanged between transport operators, so that various customized individualistic itineraries can be prepared by various AI generated platforms to transform the transport travel experience to a great extent. For my organization, setting up a metro is a large scale infrastructure, need to be well thought. Normally these projects are taken up after having a thorough study called comprehensive mobility plan. City is taken, their needs are assessed for next 25 years, the requirement is put up, the transportation arrangements are decided based on the land usage. Yeah. We need to have a more intermodal stations where you can connect bus, you can have a metro, you can have a auto. The convenience, the transfer will be at convenience to be the primary mode of transport, preferred mode of transport by the Gen Z.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Kunal, do you want to pick that question now? Yeah.
No, I think sir has covered most of the points. I think one of the things we've realized is people are, of course, moving more and more towards sustainability. But in my experience, what I've seen is that Gen Z will pretty much not use any of your service unless they can book an order on a smartphone. So connected devices is basically the way to scale. So, people are not willing to wait at bus stops anymore. They're not willing to go down and hail products. So ultimately, the key to success is providing affordable, scalable, connected, and more importantly, businesses that are utilizing existing infrastructure. Of course, we need things like the metro services, which is incremental capex. But if you look at India, we have about 380 million vehicles on the road. Average utilization of those assets is about 12%, especially those on the personal mobility side. So there's significant capital of unutilized assets lying. I think it's important to utilize that, especially because India is always a capital deficient economy, and interest costs in India at 12 to 14% is some of the highest. So the focus is on to be able to leverage existing assets and delivering them in a more scalable way. Ultimately today, people expect, even a pizza, when it's being delivered to you, the pizza is going to be in your house in 6 minutes. Mobility is the same way. If people don't know the predictability and how long it's going to take for them, whether it's a bus, a bike taxi or a cab, if they don't know when it's going to come to your doorstep, they're not going to use their service.
Very well said. 12% is something that I would really want to take that and want to see more better asset utilization. It's a very important problem that India is facing, and congestion is a direct result of that. Maxson? Yeah.
So I think it's important to understand the fact that Kunal and Sir has covered important. I would call it there are two worlds. Yeah. I'm just trying to, because there's an India within the urban cities and there's beyond as well. To the urban cities, yes, which is an informed Gen Z, Gen Z1, Z2, Z3 and others. I think for them what will be important is, of course, it has to be on an app, it has to be immediate, it's here now. But I also feel that they will also skew towards the concept of how much they add or don't add to the sustainability angle. Yeah. Maybe not now, but soon I think that is one angle the new generation is going to think of. Already the kids are asking those questions, right? Whether it is, how it is helping me sustain the environment, etc. So I think that's one world. The second world problem that we still will continue to have in India, which is the tier 2, tier 3, will always be about affordability, and that will come on the back of optimization. And that's where the new sense of mobility is shared data, informed data. That is the kind of so how I would want to look at the mobility in the future is a super optimized model, which is not only, and like what's been done at the metro, is not only integrating the road, the, the rail, air, and an integrated approach to also the delivery systems, because it's not only moving people, it's also moving cargo. Yeah. So I see a huge opportunity. We have the opportunity here in India, but I still feel that these are two world problems that we have to try and solve at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. One is an informed, one is an optimized. Yeah. These are my views.
Thanks, Maxson, very well put in. Sudeep?
Yeah. So I think with Gen Z, I think I want to address one point here, the decision making. Yeah. So it's between impulsive and an informed decision making. Yeah. So if I just give you a use case which connects the keywords that we have today, like digital transformation, sustainability, and user-centric, let's talk about the food delivery apps. Yeah. You order it on your phone, so it's a digital process. But bear in mind, the sustainability concept of it should really come into picture when you have EVs, two-wheelers used in that process to deliver those. Because the scalability is good, but what about sustainability? And the user-centric experience, please understand there are two sides of it. The customer, as well as the person who's delivering that, possibly on an electric two-wheeler. So if we address this two sides of the angle, and if I can connect it with metro, so let's think about the news, right? You and me perhaps take a metro, it's not popular news, but if a film star takes a metro, it's news. So we need to break that barrier. We need to make it affordable and more, let's say an EQ level understanding that has to come into that, because in India we have a lot of EQ coming into the mobility and the decision making also. Yeah. So that's perhaps the decision making level that we'll have to shift to.
So, thanks, Sudeep. Sashi? Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, like right from the start, we have been, our tagline itself is redefining mobility. So the idea with which we look at the future is, so we look back, cars were there for 100 years. Now they've become electric. So we are at a tipping point which I would like to compare it with how the Nokia phones became a smartphone, right? So we are in an era where every 6 months the mobility models are changing. The kind of products that are being used in mobility are changing. The consumer behavior is changing. So in next 5 years to 10 years, we would like to look at it from a very agile, flexible model where the traditional logistics and commute just change based on the consumer requirement, the demand, and all of us who are trying to be in this market would like to be so agile that we are able to adapt and then cater to the requirements. So we have seen autonomous deliveries, we have seen drones coming into picture. A lot of these has constraints, but I think it is for us to take a bite on these things at this point so that 5 years down the line, we would be able to scale this up, because somebody has to take the bite, and this is the right point, this is the tipping point for all of us to do that. I always believe that the future is going to be, right now we are in a chaos, out from the chaos, the future is going to be bright.
Thank you so much, Sashi, for sharing. So I'd like to start the next round with you, Sashi. So there's a lot of buzz around battery as a service, EV as a service, right? So I would like to understand from you, for the audience, how is EV as a service, as a model, is transforming the EV adoption, especially in the B2B segment?
So I think when EV came to B2B domain, the biggest problem was trust in the product. Nobody was ready to buy the product. Infra was a problem. So EV as a service, where somebody was helping us to finance these vehicles, run it as an operational service, solved two problems. One, for business owners to take a larger bite into it, saying that, okay, I will do X percentage of my fleet as EV. It required a lot of support from the operational standpoint. Nobody wanted to buy the vehicle. And even for individuals who were trying to buy the vehicles, there were a lot of doubts and trust issues around it. So the service model helped us to accelerate that. Overall, that has also, if you look at B2B segment, most of the electrification has happened there rather than the passenger segment. Majorly because of this EV as a service model. And as we were discussing earlier, the B2C segment is also getting into battery as a service, which is a good model if we can bring it properly in a way that the people are getting advantage of battery as a service rather than, so need to be catered to a particular type of people who looks at say 100 kilometers run, 200 kilometers run. This has to be looked upon the model itself, because if you have a battery as a service catering to different segments, it will work out. So in future also, I think EV as a service model will help to prove lot of new technologies coming into the market, because adoption of a new technology by an individual or buying that technology and using it is going to be very difficult. So this model will help us to put lot of new technologies, prove it, and then go back and people will start buying, right? Yeah. How ICE vehicles have moved in. But here we have to take this through the EV as a service mode, and then finally maybe people start buying it.
Also, Sashi, could you give an example, like what does EV as a service mean, so that for a layman to understand?
Yeah, so instead of buying a vehicle, you finance the vehicle through multiple means, right? Mostly in a leasing model, where your liability is not as high as buying the vehicle and using it. And a lot of your service, maintenance issues, battery warranties are taken care by the financing option itself. So this will ensure, so I've always seen that earlier, if you buy a car, you keep it for 15 years. Now people don't want to go more than 5 years. So within that 5-year lease period, you use that car, and after 5 years, you buy a new car. Yeah. Your liability of selling, everything is taken care initially from the financial modeling perspective. And you are able to do it in a much lower cost. And the financing has to be changed. Like the financing rates are higher right now for EVs, but hopefully that is also coming down. So this is the model which has worked out well in B2B. I think B2C also people are able to work it out.
Thanks, Sashi. I would like to ask Maxson now. So Maxson, been talking to each other for quite some time, but it's the first time we've met. So I remember when Magenta was started, you were traditionally into charge point operator business, but now became a leading player in terms of urban logistics, right? And there's a lot of growth happening in urban logistics. I would like to understand, Maxson, from your experience, if you could enlighten the audience in terms of how do you see the adoption of EVs evolving in densely populated cities like Delhi NCR, Mumbai for that matter. You come from that part of the world, please.
I was in Delhi yesterday, and the only conversation was how bad the smoke or the fog out, and how quickly we need to go the EV way. But just to make it real for all of y'all, how many of y'all have actually ordered an Amazon or a Flipkart box, over the last 1 or 2 months? And everyone, Amazon, right? I'll just give you statistics over here. Every time you open an Amazon box or a Flipkart delivery which comes to your home, you are actually adding close to 2 kgs of CO2 in the last stretch of the delivery. So each one of us is contributing if the delivery is not happening on an EV, right? So we don't have to talk about Delhi, we don't have to talk about those. It's all of us who are adding to the urban pollution. Now, we do that even when we sit at home. So just because we're delivering, the things are coming to home doesn't mean that we are moving away. We are actually making the cargo move from wherever destination to our head. So each one of us is contributing with or without traveling. So that's one of the things I think is very important for us to know, and hence electric vehicles. And now when everyone talks about sustainable mobility, I always try to spin it to a slightly bigger thing. EV for me doesn't only stand for electric vehicles, it should stand for environment friendly vehicles. And that's why EV is one of the transition elements. I also believe there's hydrogen and other forms, or we call it flex fuels.
Yeah.
These are already, pilots are happening. Of course, hydrogen, they have the time to go. Like we gave 100 years to the ICE vehicles. I think we have another couple of few decades to give it to these flex fuels and others. But what I want to say is the original ecosystem that has been built on, which is the ICE engine, be it the oil transport, the way the businesses have been built around that ecosystem, including the servicing of those vehicles, all of this is getting dismantled as we speak, in some way or the other. It may not happen in a day's time, but the dismantling is happening. And that is what is happening in the sustainable mobility. It's not only about the vehicles. The way these vehicles are financed is different. The way the vehicles are data tracked is different. The way the vehicles are maintained is also different. The way the perception of that vehicle is also different. For example, we also used to think of, we were discussing a vehicle, a car, 10 years, 5 years. Electric vehicles would be shorter. So I would believe this is a new ecosystem that we need to start thinking, and discussions like this is going to happen. But net, this is a transition happening as we speak. It is not about the future. Everyone thinks about EVs are going to happen. It is happening already. We were talking about some numbers. Just from my business perspective, close to 51% of the three-wheeler cargo vehicles sold today in India are already electric. So the transition is it. That's my view.
51% is huge, right? So we are always a question like, where is the EV adoption happening? So I think you should actually ask the panelists, and they know it's happening. That's why they're actually doing the businesses very successfully. We also have Kunal, right, who've been supporting multiple startups in this sector. So I wanted to understand from Kunal, like, there's always, like Maxson has brought an interesting point, like, we need to call it as an environmental friendly. It's a little off the question, but I wanted to also get a perspective from you, because there's always a debate or a discussion. I'm sure some audience might be thinking, where is the kind of electricity coming from? Like EVs are still not eco-friendly. The grid is still not green. So how can you say that electric mobility is still eco-friendly? So how do you answer these questions? And I'm sure things are improving. Maybe could you enlighten the audience here?
I mean, long answer. Short answer to that question is, ultimately there are things which you can control personally and things which you cannot. All of us as individuals, whether it's for personal use case or for business use case, can choose whether our next vehicle can be diesel or electric. On an individual basis, very little I can do to try to control how that energy is being generated, whether it's being used in a thermal power plant or it's coming through renewable sources. Secondly, all of us have the ability to install a solar panel on our rooftops. Not all, but I would say most of us. So if you actually want to be net positive and want to go electric, you can buy an electric vehicle, install solar and go off the grid completely. But that's theoretical, and it's probably not going to happen in many cases. So my answer to that question is that, what you can control, please go about making the right decision. Of course, there are challenges and issues, and a lot of people are worried about things like residual value and resale value. And I think no longer range anxiety, it's the charge anxiety that's becoming more and more of an issue in terms of ownership. But the good news is that, there are a lot of businesses who understand and recognize those challenges and issues and are building solutions to cater to that. I have personally vowed never ever to buy an ICE vehicle ever again. 2 years ago, you had limited choices. Two things have happened now. That now there's an electric vehicle, four-wheeler, starting from a price point of 7 lakhs going up to 2 crores, 3 crores. So there are now various options available, even on the two-wheeler side. So I think it's no longer a question of affordability. And if you look at total cost of ownership now, even, for commercial use cases, it's a no-brainer. For personal use cases, you may still not achieve payback or things like that, but ultimately as a personal or individual, your priority is sustainability. And living in Delhi, where our AQI is never below 300 except on a good day, ultimately, it's about what are you doing and helping in that situation. I could go on and on, but pretty much do what you can control and don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. Even in batteries, I'm sure there's a lot of perceptions around where are the critical minerals coming. There's a lot of tech evolution happening. Now we are talking about batteries, motors which are rare earth free, batteries which are nothing to do with cobalt. We're also talking about new technologies like sodium ion and all. So there is tech happening, and as Kunal mentioned, right, we should focus on what we can control, right, rather than completely dismissing that EV is not eco-friendly. I would now like to move ahead with Sudeep. Sudeep, could you also introduce a little bit on what ARAI AMTF is doing, and how are you actually supporting startups? And I understand you're helping startups from conceptualization to actually scaling up on mobility side of things. Maybe if you could give some examples, because I'm sure there are a lot of audience who are also looking for support from ARAI AMTIF. Yeah.
So before I introduce the AMTIF, which is a Section 8 company of ARAI, so just to set the context, ARAI effectively is involved in the automotive research segment of it with testing, homologation and validation related services. But the reason ARAI AMTIF came into the picture as an incubator, as a support ecosystem member, is because we understood that the startups are competing with the likes of OEMs, using the same resources, the labs that they get access to, but without the scalable level of mentorship, access to investments. And that was not a level playing field for all of them, right? So that is where AMTIF came into the picture. Now, mobility as we talk is, like you said, starting with the battery chemistry all the way up to how things move. We are also involved with development of tech for drones, for space tech. So we just had a discussion with the ISRO chairperson right now. So if I break it into 3 critical components that we are supporting, it's innovate, incubate, and integrate. Because all the members here today actually represent these 3 keywords sitting here together. In terms of innovation, like you said, the lithium ion, it's a paradox. We don't have enough reserves perhaps, but how do we make it more sustainable for the battery chemistry? So we have startups working on sodium ion tech. So again, battery packs coming off, and it's already in static use. So, we have utilization cycles happening. So the cycles are increasing, the stability is increasing, and most interestingly, the integration part of it is already in the works right now. And another ecosystem that we're building is our startups are now providing these parts or products to the aggregators. So it's an ecosystem within itself. So they're supporting each other's product development also. Finally, I think we need to address one pain point which I raise on behalf of the startups. So the investments. A lot of technologies which are yet to hit mainstream markets need policies to come in, right? Because government has to set regulations, compliances, everything needs to set in the same pace as the innovators are developing it. And on the other cycle, with all due respect, the investors also need to adapt to these as we move, because the right investments will help them to come into market. So it's the balance that is required between the stakeholders that we are trying to empower and build a conducive environment for the startups. Because one key element that we addressed recently was what Ministry of Heavy Industries did. They started an industry accelerator program where 10 startups building indigenous technologies were funded with 35 crores as pure grants.
Oh, that's amazing.
And these have the strategic advantage of supplying to government first as the first buyer. So that's the significant part that we are trying to build. And similarly, the models will keep rolling out. So I think if we empower the innovators with the right set of resources, it will be a very, very easy model to integrate it.
Fantastic. I think India, right? I'm sure all of you must be aware the EV ecosystem has actually brought into the limelight in India by startup, and there are a lot of startups here representing that. I want to also ask Sashi to come in, because they're also supported by IT Madras Incubation Center. Do you also want to quickly add on what Sudeep has mentioned, the role of incubators actually helping startups based on your experience with IT Madras?
So I think when we started off from IIT Incubation Cell, the major support that we have got is from the ecosystem around that, right? So we were able to work with a lot of innovators who are in the same field. So EV, 10 years back, there was nothing. We were talking about moving from a lead acid to lithium.
Yeah.
Right? So there were companies like Aether Energy, Exponent, as all of us came from the same ecosystem, and we were working together before we split into our own areas, right? So that ecosystem you'll never get outside, and the policies around how do you help a initial startup when they are thinking about ideas, when they're prototyping. So that point, it was missing, but still IIT Madras was one of the fewer or first ecosystem which built a center of excellence for EV.
Yeah.
And that helped us, all of us, in various ways, at least in terms of understanding the market better, understanding the tech better. So there are professors who work on the technology. There are investors who visit us because we are inside the IIT Madras campus.
Yeah.
And there is an office space where all of us can come together and then work together, talk about our problems. So I think this is something that you have to replicate everywhere, which will help entrepreneurs to come up in any field. It's not alone EV. I can comment only on the EV side.
No, very true. I remember visiting IIT Madras Research Park, met Professor Junjungal. I think every time I visit, there's something to learn in this sector.
I was fortunate to work under him, do a master's under him.
Brilliant. So I would before moving to Mani sir, I would also ask quickly if Kunal wants to respond on the investor side that Sudeep mentioned. Yeah.
So what?
So Sudeep was mentioning even investors need to also adapt to the things that's happening in the policies. Sudeep, did I?
No, absolutely. You know, I'll tell you honestly, we always keep an eye out on policy. Unfortunately, in India, two things. Policies move at a much slower pace than technology and product innovation. And that's what I keep telling my founders is that you will have to operate at least in the initial stages of your product life cycle, especially if you're a category creators in areas of gray.
Yeah.
And I've made it a point that as long as you are not illegal, it's okay. You don't have to be legal.
Yeah.
And policy hopefully will catch up.
Yeah.
So it's a continuous cat and mouse game. I mean, if we had waited for policy to be enumerated and announced before we launched Rapido, Zingbus, I mean, I can go on. I'd still have all my money in the bank and I'd be waiting.
Yeah.
And I'd start my investors would be starting to call money back and I would have delivered 0% return. So we are very pragmatic about it. And I can honestly tell you, we don't like to break the law, but we will continue to operate as long as we know that it's not 100% legal, but that's okay.
Yeah. No, very well put. It's not always about like startups should completely depend on policies and all that. Otherwise, you're going to miss the bus, right? So India's missed bus in many technologies like solar. We missed the bus. I'm sure in EV, it's almost there, but still, I think there's a lot needs to be done. Sir, let's now talk about a lot of wonderful work Kochi Metro is doing. Sir, I wanted to understand a little bit on how has digital transformation, such as common ticketing and centralized command control, played a role in achieving Kochi Metro's vision for seamless public transport.
Yeah. Kochi Metro happens to be the first metro to introduce banking standard-based transit card in India. That is NCMC version 1. Though its potential was not tested till we introduced Water Metro. Now, with the introduction of Water Metro, by using Kochi One card, the a passenger can travel Metro, Water Metro seamlessly without having any additional instrument. We are also thinking of aligning ourselves with the National Common Mobility Card, which talks are on. With that, the customer or commuter can travel any metro or in fact any public transport in India by using your own debit card if it is NCMC compliant. And if you have common command and control center, your entire operations are digitalized. We had been struggling to put our real-time location of metro on the internet. It should have a web interface and all. Then we tried various options. Then we thought, okay, it's not our core business. Then we enabled our data on GTFS format. Now recently we found that Where Is My Train has come up with an application, exact location of metro. That helps the Gen Z very greatly. He can plan his movement very meticulously. And that is lighter part of it. The major part is many AI generated platforms can generate customized itineraries where you can plan exactly. You need not waste your time. It matches the pulse of Gen Z. You need not wait. You can be just in time. You are very sure of your destination. You can plan well. The command and control center facilitates this. I only request all public transport operators if they can enable on one platform or the other. The many startups, many innovators will bring in so many solutions which we cannot presume. We cannot even imagine today how it could transform.
Yeah, very, very interesting, sir. So I also have a follow-up question on Water Metro. So today I was just talking to sir before the panel. So I was mentioning the electric boats in Water Metros can also charge the place where electric vehicles are also getting charged. So that is really, really very interesting, right? I haven't seen electric boats are also getting charged at the place where electric vehicles are also getting charged. That's fantastic, sir. Can you also share a little bit on how Water Metro is integrating towards sustainability and user centricity with other public transport modes?
Water Metro somehow, because of its unique proposition, always first in many kinds. It uses battery-powered hybrid catamaran with a double hull. The hulls are so designed, there will not be absolutely, there is no ripple. When it travels, shore will not have any damage. It also protects fauna and flora. There is no, it's eco-friendly, it's a sustainable. And it's a completely air-conditioned. It is also fitted with a passenger counting system, which prohibits overloading. If there is a 100 passenger capacity, you will not be able to load more than 100, which is a major cause for many of the boat accidents. And Water Metro, because there is no track you need to put up, the infrastructure cost is so less when compared to metro. And it exactly suits the geography of Kochi, because many islands, many lagoons parallel to Arabian Sea. The depth is so sufficient. The success of Kochi Metro is so good. Today, more than 15 cities in India contemplating to bring in similar kind of transport. We are not really enjoying the success of Water Metro because many of the islands are yet to be connected. Right now, whichever the operational, we are operating some feeder service so that Water Metro can be connected to our Kochi Metro, so that passenger can have a, with a little hassle, will be able to travel across city of Kochi.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll move back to Kunal. So let's talk a little bit on the user experience, user-centric experience. So we're just discussing before the panel on how they're doing some interesting work with Rapido and others. Maybe, Kunal, you can also give other examples how you're keeping user at the center of your decision making and planning your, scaling your products. Yeah.
I think.
Your mic.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, when we look at building businesses and we clearly categorize them into two broad areas, category creation and if you're in the land grab, where there's an existing category, you're building technology to improve the efficiency of delivering a product or service. Ultimately, if you're building a consumer-facing business, you have to keep very clear in terms of who's in the center of gravity, what is his hair-on-fire problem, and continuously build product and innovate on the features and functionality to meet his continuous needs. One thing we have realized is many times even customers are not aware of exactly what they need. Two-wheeler taxis is one such case where we were very clear that we were building a category and awareness level was very low and safety concerns were very high. So we knew that technology and product actually can move much faster than you can convince customers to change behavior. So many times it's actually significantly better to undercapitalize such businesses to ensure that if you starve them of capital, they have a culture of building amongst in an area of constraints. When you're constrained with capital, you are not you basically focus more and more on product innovation, technology innovation, and customer satisfaction rather than scaling. When we funded Rapido, since you brought it up, there were 20 other companies that had raised significantly more capital, including Ola. I still remember when Ola raised $1 billion, we invested 5 crores in Rapido. And the reason was simple. For 3.5 years, the company didn't move out of Bangalore. Everybody else scaled it started scaling. So if you prioritize scale over customers and their needs, the probability of success goes less. I think this is one thing that founders must recognize now. Capital will never be your biggest competitive moat. It will always be execution. And for execution, you have to make sure that you are continuously in touch with customers, speaking to them, getting feedback from them, because that is the only way that you will be able to create a category leading company.
Very well put up. So continuous engagement with the customer is the key. Sashi, do you also want to share a little bit on how are you making sure that your users are happy with your service? Yeah.
Yeah, for us, the users are the biggest user for us is the driver who drives the vehicle, right? So they are our first customer. So if they are not happy, the entire business is gone.
Yeah.
So making them happy is what we focus on, and the customers that we are delivering the goods for. So these two, so we have two different types of customers coming from different angles. So we always believe that one, we cannot scale up to multiple geographies unless every location, these two stakeholders are happy, right? So we want to understand, and we take a lot of feedbacks from these both these people. So we have regular meetups with these guys, understand their lifestyle also. So driver community is something that we are very focused on, because we wanted to understand how these guys are working, what is the kind of working environment they are going through, how do we support them much better. And the geography is something that we will move only with the current set of customers we have. So we don't go to multiple customers, because mostly we don't have the bandwidth to cater to multiple customers.
Yeah.
So we want our customers to be happy, and then we scale up with that. Similarly, the driver section also, whoever is working with us, we want them to be happy, because that is the backbone of the business. So if that is gone, there's no point in going all over the place. So that's something that we will never do that.
Fantastic. Of course, without driver partners, I think scaling any EV business is not easy, especially in B2B. So Maxson, what's your experience? It's not just on the logistics, but also on the charge point, like, especially on the user side. I still remember in Delhi NCR, I go visit some charging stations. I don't even get a place to even park my vehicle. I don't understand how they even installed a charger there. And some of the chargers, I don't even find the guns. There is already a second-hand market which are actually stealing charging guns. And also, how are you solving all of these issues? Can you bring both sides of the discussion? Yeah.
So I am also a charge point operator, but I am also a user, because our largest business is a logistics business. We do captive, but we were doing a lot of charging, and I will be open on this forum to say that public charging is a social service for a lot of factors. But let's talk about this factor at hand. What has happened? Just from an adoption of an EV perspective, earlier there was this, like Kunal rightly said, it was a the anxieties have moved. The first anxiety was with charging protocol. For example, the government of India unfortunately went with a protocol which was not universal. But that is behind us right now. The GB by T is behind us. So now it is a CCS2. So any car that you were to buy would typically fit on the CCS2 protocol. So now the protocol anxiety is out. Then it became the charger.
But two-wheeler still remains.
Two-wheeler still remains. But two-wheeler, I think there you need to understand that the charging profile there is largely at homes and offices, and not so much on public charging. Just to follow through that, the problem statements have changed. So now the chargers exist. So now earlier then there was a problem of, from protocol it became whether the charger is available when I drive from Bombay to Pune. Now the charger is available, but now the charger uptime is an issue. And for that there are also solutions in place. So what I'm trying to say is the problem statement from a charging perspective has also evolved. And the ecosystem has matured. The public charging ecosystem is slightly less mature. The B2B, like Finland, as we use a lot of our own charging profiles, and we do a lot of optimization. So like I said earlier, since it's an ecosystem view, it's not like spread the charging infrastructure everywhere. It has the initial government incentives and initiatives to put up charging. For example, in Delhi, half the chargers which were installed in 2018 under FAME 1 and are now under FAME 2, essentially you will not find them working or theft. But the Gen 2 as we call it, all of those are stabilized, it's mature. Even the government has realized that it's not easy or not okay to just spend money. That's not the right way to run business. You better allow the private companies to do it. and the lag between government understanding and the technology movement has kind of slightly reduced.
Yeah.
Earlier, it used to be a gap of at least a couple of years, and we're on stage here, we have seen that through. But right now, the reactiveness from the government is a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So, what is happening? I'll just give you. The public charging infrastructure notifications are out. Now, Mahua, under the Housing Development
Urban Affairs,
Ministry, is also coming up with notifications of charging in your building or in your place or
RWAs,
at the RWAs. So, charging is no longer the problem as we thought it would be, right? The problems have moved out. Now, how to optimize this charging? How can you use? So, I'll just give an example. Earlier, in London, one city of London, there were 40 apps, charging apps, 40 charging apps, and someone had to go through all those. But in India right now, we can still manage with one app because the charging point operators have also understood that we can work with one. So we have the advantage of skipping a learning cycle, fortunately for us, based out of North America and Europe, and that has happened in charging. What now new? I think if I were to predict a challenge in this space is the cost optimization, because now time of day charging is going to be an important
POD,
piece. Because when you charge decides how much you have to pay. Right? So I think it's a nice evolution to be part of it, and but the best part is every time you do charging or every time you run an electric vehicle, there's enormous amount of data. For example, today my biggest problem is for the 3,000 vehicles that I'm running, every 5 seconds I'm getting data while they are on the road or while they're charging. How to use that is going to be big important, and hence for me, redefining mobility, the technology, the digital transformation, fortunately is the first part, is now going to be a bigger angle than the vehicle itself.
Right, there's a lot of IoT coming in.
Absolutely.
But before quickly, Maxson, we also want to share a little bit on how are you enhancing your user experience here.
Right. I agree that for us, one of the first user is the driver. Right. In mobility, till the time you have driverless technology, your vehicle cannot move without a driver. So I think, be it you and I as owner, I as a fleet operator or the driver. So for us, the driver is the biggest angle. And I'll just give a quick thing what has happened in the driver. So our driver technology is interlinked with DigiLocker. So when a driver comes on board to us, 3 clicks and he can become a driver if his BGV is already in place.
Very interesting.
Second, he gets to see what he has earned for the day. He also gets to see all his notifications of the challans, etc. ascribed to him, all on a single app. So unknown to many, our drivers are more tech savvy than all of us put together, because they use it very optimized, right? So that is what we have done from the driver angle. From a customer side, we are doing a lot of route optimization. Because we found that unlike only very few companies still, I mean, logistics is like 1,000 years old, but still there's a lot of inefficiency in the routing systems. Other than 2 companies in India, I don't want to name them, every other company who so-called talks about quick commerce, deliveries, does not even have a standard routing platform. It's a point platform, which means there's a lot of optimization there, and now we are offering that as a service, saying, hey, listen, you tell us where it wants to be delivered, we will manage the rest of the thing. So I think these are some very interesting spaces which are coming through, not only from a mobility perspective, be it cargo movement and also people movement. So these are some of the things we are doing. So we have 3 parts to our business. One is the logistics, one is charging. One of our biggest investments is the informatics arm, which is where we have close to around 60 people just writing codes on how to make our operations better.
Brilliant. I think you've done the 360 kind of a dimension on the user center. Very, very well put. I'll open Q&A in 5 minutes. So please be ready with your questions. I would like to ask the one last question quickly, 1 minute each, on starting with Sudeep. So what would be the next big thing happening in mobility in the next 5 years?
So I think the single largest value proposition that I think which will come to India will be the decision making on how to use mobility as a service, how to make informed decisions on what will power your mobility, right from the battery, right from the choice of service you take. But I think the largest transition I see with the startups you're working is moving from personal mobility to mass transport. That's the single largest thing that we wish could happen in a more streamlined manner.
Yeah, very true. Otherwise, we can't solve the congestion. Maxson.
I like the government as a Panchvarsha Yojana. I have a 5-year, So the next 5 years, I totally agree, is personal mobility to shared mobility. The next 5 years is from driven technology to driverless. These are the two things I believe if I had enough money as an investor, I would put my punts on. So these are the two predictions from my side.
Autonomous. Let's hear from the investor.
We refer to this as the Suzuki 2.0 moment, which is basically our thesis on how we are transitioning away from ICE to EV. Just as Suzuki in 1985 came and created the entire ICE supply chain, from the auto components to the OEMs to the distribution, the finance and insurance, we're going to see such significant disruption. I think people are going to be caught unaware of how fast many of the legacy companies that have been around now for 30 years will suddenly become less and less relevant. I don't know how many people yesterday read an article that Nissan Motors, it's a legacy OEM, been around for hundreds of years, only has 12 months of runway left. I mean, this is something that we took, is when you look at a startup, is how much runway do you have, how much capital you need to use. To think that a global multinational 100-year-old company is now counting the number of months before they run out of cash is a classic example of how Suzuki 2.0 is going to disrupt the entire value system. This disruption is going to result in wealth creation of over $1 trillion. As a fund, our thesis is simple: invest in the picks and shovels companies, invest in the B2B, invest in the companies that's going to accelerate this transition. And if you're in it for 10, 15 years, you're going to be sitting on multiple returns on investment.
Yeah, thanks for the investment advice also. So I would like to ask Mr. Mani, sir.
Yeah, I feel a lot of entry of autonomous vehicles, same in metro, unattended train operation. I think we are going to spend less money on human force. As a result, the end customer will get a lot of advantage, and there will be a lot of competition among all the operators. So we should change being a competitor. We should make it a complementing each other, where I run a service, accordingly parallelly no one will run, we'll provide additional, so that both can be a preferred mode of transport.
Thank you. Sashi.
I think the best thing that can happen is after 5 years, we don't have this kind of panel discussing about how is EV adoption going on, right? We should have everything integrated. We should be so seamlessly not worried about the mobility piece at all, right? So we have everything sorted out. It is easier said than done, but hopefully we are going towards that, where everything gets integrated into a super app kind of thing, where nobody has to worry about what kind of vehicle, what kind of technology, nothing, right? So it's just as seamless as possible. That's what we are looking at.
So we heard about super app, B2B picking up, and autonomous vehicles, and Sudeep, you mentioned public transport from private to public. Yeah, I think we are out of time, but thank you so much. It's been a wonderful panel to host you all. A big round of applause, please. Yeah, thank you.